as soon as we. Give me a second. All right, I'm gonna have to resend it to you. All right.
Oh, you got it. I'll be waiting.
All righty.
All right, Tony.
All right, so we are live. Sorry about that, everyone. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in for our third episode of Grief. Let's talk about it. And today I want to talk about the holidays and grieving. And today we still have people that are going to be coming in, and I want to take a moment to have the panel introduce themselves. How's everybody doing today?
Blessed and lucky. Blessed and lucky.
All right. So take a minute and introduce yourself.
That's okay. Shall I start?
Yes, go ahead, start.
Okay. That's okay, Tony. My name is Alexandra Maas. I'm from the Netherlands. I've been a grief counselor for 17 years now, specialized in masculine grief, the way men grieve, and starting to work overseas online since COVID. We are all understanding how online work is and how it works as a therapy. So that's my new line of business. And I'm having a program about grieving over the holidays, a 6 weeks program coming up. So that's how my interest in this topic is filled.
All right, I'll go next. We can just go in alphabetical order here. My name is Amanda Ferret, and my business is Value Yourself Counseling. I'm a certified emotional wellness counselor and advanced EFT practitioner, but grief is one of my specialties because life has made me and grief very good friends, unfortunately. So I pay that forward by helping others with their grief. I especially help women and gender expansive folks rewrite their narratives because we as humans are storytellers. And so when we've experienced loss and grief, we have to figure out how to rewrite our stories. So I also focus on whole person self-care and help people figure out how to prioritize themselves without guilt or shame, because we often lose ourselves when we are grieving as well.
All right, Claire.
Hi there. I am Claire Schwartz. I am the owner and founder of Miriam's Well Healing in lovely New Jersey. And I can be found online at youcanhealyourgrief.com. Probably like most of us, grief and trauma has rewritten and upended my life as long as I can remember. So they say do what you know. So that's what I do. So I come from both a psychology background and a holistic background. And so I try to blend those to really help. My ethos right now is demystifying and destigmatizing grief and trauma healing, because before people even ask for help, there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way. So how to explain all of that and make things clear and help people feel more comfortable before they actually get to asking for help. I'm not the only person on this call who has a book, so I will plug the book. Which is Putting Out the Fire. And it's what I wrote when my mother passed away that I wish I had when my mother passed away, about how to deal with the initial shock. And it says the first week, but it really can be anybody who's starting out on that journey. So that book's available on my website. And I am going to be teaching my own Grief During the Holidays piece as well, but I'll talk about that at the end. That'll be a workshop in a couple of weeks. And would love to have as many people join that as possible. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane. I live on the unceded traditional territory of the Hulkaminam and the Senchothan speaking people, also known as Hot Spring Island, the west coast of Canada. And I'm an embodiment teacher and coach, and I help fellow childless, not by choice women integrate grief and open up to the possibility that life still holds, even though it doesn't look how we wanted it to. And as a childless person grieving over the holidays, much like the rest of the year, it's kind of an ambiguous type of grief and I'm happy to be here to talk more about that with everyone here.
All right. It's good to have you. Jenny?
Hello, I'm Jenny Diltz, and a little bit about me, I'm a creative empath who loves and thrives on connection with God, myself, and with others. I embrace the duality of preciousness of life in everything that I see and experience, whether that's in a professional setting as a grief coach or at home with my husband and 5 kids. And I'm very excited and grateful to be here tonight.
Awesome. Dave?
Hey, Tony. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Roberts. I'm a retired addictions counselor and a clinical supervisor with the state of New York. I am no stranger to grief. I have danced with grief since I've been 5 years old and continue to dance with grief in a variety of different ways. The loss event that got me to really headlong into doing service work and embracing a life of meaning and purpose by helping bereaved individuals was the transition of my daughter, Janine, who was 18 years old when she transitioned from this world due to cancer in 2003. So March 2003. So next year will be 20 years that I've walked the path of a grieving parent. I'm also an adjunct professor of psychology and psychology child life at Utica University. One of the courses I teach regularly is death, dying, and bereavement. I've done a variety of different workshops nationally and locally, including workshops on managing grief during the holidays. I'm also an author, and I guess I will just plug my book a little bit too. It's a book called When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister. It is a book in part about the spiritually transformative experience that was guided by Reverend Patty Farino 7 years after my following my daughter's transition. In fact, 11/11 was the 12th year anniversary of our meeting in that spiritual transition or spiritual transformation. And Patty and I co-authored this book to talk about that, as well as the importance of integrating psychology and spirituality and belief expansion in general to help individuals transcend loss of any kind and life challenges of any kind. So that's my biography as it is today. My biography as my grief journey is ever evolving. So the next time I do this with you, I might have another piece to add to that.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for being on, Dave.
Well, thank you for having me, Tony.
You're welcome, man. Thank you. Dee, how you doing, girl?
Hey, thank you for having me. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
No worries.
I am Dee Anaya. I am an interdisciplinary artist, a grief coach, and a death doula. I create grief installations here in my town, and I do a lot of character work. So as I said, I'm interdisciplinary. So that could mean anything between painting and doing clown work. So I am an advocate for folks integrating pleasure back into their lives. I am also a bereaved mother. Our daughter Phoebe died when she was 4 years old on Christmas Day. So we're here about 9 years in. And as David has said, I've been doing this grief thing my whole life, you know, whether it was being in proximity to my mother's grief when her mother died when I was 2 months old, or, you know, and the story just, you know, kind of keeps going on and on from there. But thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you for being on. Jeffrey, how we doing, brother?
Fantastic. How are you? Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. My brand new puppy decided it was time to run out and try to make a jailbreak.
That's what puppies do.
So
That's what puppies do.
now she's just killing it.
Oh, very nice.
That's so
Very
sweet.
good. So you want to take a minute to introduce yourself to everyone?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah, my name's Jeffrey Davis. I'm a executive coach. I work with men. And part of the process that we do that's super important is we work on a deep and fundamental level, along with some of the tools and techniques that help them execute that. But deep and fundamental level is we work with the wounds and the emotional level in men, and in many places in most of the world that hasn't really had space to be examined or articulation around it in a safe way or a vocabulary around it. And so there's a lot of healing that needs to be done around that, and grief around who they were, around having bought into a vision of what the world says that you should be, but yet, there's something else inside them about that. And also, unresolved forgiveness and wounds and some of the pain that they have from losses in their past. So it's super important work, I think. It makes a difference in their lives and the people around them. It makes the world safer for women and children. And it's interesting that I do that from a place in Mexico, San Miguel de Allende, which is built on top of rose quartz, which is the crystal that activates the heart energy.
Very nice. Well, thank you everybody for being on. I'm really excited to dive into this topic, grieving over the holidays. So I did come up with a few questions from talking with some of the panel members and some of the people that I've talked to outside of just outside. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I think is really important, is understanding your new reality. After a loss, right? There's so many things that go along with it, and we can all speak from experience. The first holiday you think will always be the worst, but as it goes on, it progressively starts to unravel. And so then you find yourself in situations to where, you feel like you're going crazy, you're lonely, and those many things that come along with it. Let's talk about it. Who want to start?
It's a big panel, so we're all waiting for somebody else to start.
Okay, well, Dylan, Alexandra and I was talking about it earlier, dealing with that new reality, the reality that your loved one is not there anymore. And the reality that, or the acknowledgement that they're not going to be there. And what are the steps of understanding how to take care of yourself in this new reality?
I can speak to that a little bit, and I'll just kind of break the ice. So I've been told, and I believe that grief can be an experience of having an overflow of love with no place to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the new reality is what do I do with this? Who am I without this identity? It's interesting. I'm, I guess, very fortunate. Both of my parents are still alive. And I earlier today, I was talking to a friend of mine, and both of hers had passed. And I was checking in with her about what her reality was in that process, and she was talking about how disorienting the loss was, because your identity of being a daughter, or in this case for me, a son, in relation to an energy or a human that no longer exists, and that now exists that energetically and also in past history, but there's no moments moving forward. So there's nothing to create. There's nothing to communicate, and anything that wasn't created or communicated is now null and void and stopped at that moment, right? So there is no tomorrow, and mixed in with the grief is some regret and some, I guess, even in relation to a divorce, there's an identity of you, the other person, and then who we are, right?
Mhm.
And in this particular case, the identity of, the person, a son and a parent, and then, a family, right? And those are very distinct identities. And if you're a son, who are you a son to?
Mhm.
So it's a big readjustment, and it includes everything from looking at um, everything in a very realistic way, and allowing the regret and the grief to process through you, for what can never happen anymore, or what you had hopes for that can't happen, the healing or whatever it happens to be. And also what I've discovered when I've experienced grief from loss, um, has been moments of intermittent gratitude,
Mm.
right, for what the contribution from that person was, and that becomes the flickering light that I try to connect to more and more, and I've let go of any thought of, oh well, if I'm living in gratitude or love or connection or anything and not living in grief, then that's disrespectful, because there's also um, a I don't know if it's culture or whatever it is, but I feel it in myself that, there's you're supposed to grieve in a particular way, but not too much,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, like don't get too messy around anybody, but don't allow people to talk about yourself.
We have a disturbance in one of the. Okay, on the
Yeah,
microphone.
there was some background noise going on over there.
Yep.
But yeah, totally agree.
My bad.
Yep. Tony, if I could dovetail off of that
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a
most
little bit, if you guys don't mind, because I'll forget if I don't say
Totally.
this.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, what Jeffrey had mentioned about, the reality of pretty much of identity in terms of, are we still parents? Are we still a son or a daughter after our loved one dies? I think that's a big part of that. And I think that goes out throughout the grief process. I think it also becomes more accelerated and more intense along with other emotions during the holiday seasons, whether it's the first holiday, whether it's a second holiday, the third or fourth. And you had mentioned this, it doesn't really matter because grief is a circular journey. We can experience the intense pain of any specific holiday, birthday, at any time, depending on what's going on in the present moment. And a lot of times, what the reality for us becomes, how do we incorporate our loved ones into our existing traditions? What traditions do we keep? What traditions do we modify? What traditions do we eliminate? And how do we do this? And that's the other part of the reality with that. How are we going to do this in a way that people aren't going to look at us and think we got two heads? And as far as I'm concerned, the other part of the reality is the rules that we are now operating under are much different than the rules we operated on prior to the catastrophic loss that we experienced. If we utilize the same rules that we did moving forward after loss, there wouldn't be movement. So, we have to express our new reality with individuals who understand it and who can support it. So that's the other piece of the reality. And the other thing is that the emotions of grief and the intensity of grief, the days leading up to the actual holiday, whether it's Christmas, New Year's, whatever we choose to celebrate, is usually more intense and worse than the actual day itself
Yeah.
because of the anticipation of getting
Yeah,
there.
the apprehension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the other part of the reality, is that grief intensifies more during these milestone events. And individuals think, geez, maybe I'm going crazier than I think I already am because of grief. But in reality, it's normal. And we need to normalize that intensity, particularly during the holidays.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to add one thought to that, if I might. is that if you're lucky enough to lose someone who was beloved to you, that's a tremendous blessing. But there are also losses where the relationship was more difficult, and in some cases pretty terrible. And so that's a whole other piece of there's a different elephant in the room when that has occurred.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that the holidays bring so much of the family all gets together, and then what? And so there's different expectations. Things can get very intense very quickly. And then you add old memories and uncomfortable stories and a tremendous amount of food and probably too much alcohol, and then and things can get very out of hand. But I'm always making this point, is that not everyone has that good fortune to have wonderful relationships in their lives. It's a different kind of process when folks leave behind what I call a lumpy legacy, where there's some good stuff and there's some and how do you deal with the and what's the relationship between those two things? Because it's all part of the grief process, and it's most of the grief industry, if you will, is directed towards that one particular type, where it's you've lost a child, you've lost someone who it was huge in your life and you don't know how you're going to live without them. But I thought of this a long time ago, because it was definitely something that was deeply aware for me when I had lost certain family members. I was like, where's the sympathy card for the barely adequate? for the, well, we used to be friends, where for the difficult, cousin or aunt or neighbor or whatever, where it's a whole different puppy. So I always want to make that point that there's this other category. Right.
Well, there's some gray area there too, because the people that I've lost, they behaved well during the holidays. That's when they showed love and how they loved. And so the holidays were when I wanted to be around these people, because they were on their best behavior. That was when their love languages came out. And so it makes the holidays even harder, because those were those good moments with those people that are now gone.
Yeah.
And so, there's kind of a spectrum there. There's not just the one or the other. And so, my piece of that is now, and I'm very much alone. I don't live in Montana anymore. I'm out on the Oregon coast by myself. My family's all back in Montana. My dad's mom was the matriarch that planned the holidays with her sister. They went back and forth. Thanksgiving was always at my grandma's house. Christmas was always at my aunt's house. And, now that those people are mostly gone and older, and, my brother and his new wife have taken on some of the holidays, but she's got this great big family that hasn't had the losses that my family has had. And so, like, one of the first Christmases there, and they moved into my grandparents' home and remodeled it. So the last piece of my childhood is now my brother and his new wife's home, and her family's coming in and making all these comments. And I'm jumping into the kitchen, because that was the kitchen I grew up in. During the holidays, you jump in and you help. My brother was grilling steaks. I was the grill runner. And one of her family members made this comment, and I was like, about me like jumping in and helping myself to the kitchen. And I was like, this is the kitchen I grew up in.
Yeah.
And this is what my family does. And this is still to me, my grandparents' house. And it has been for this many, that's not going to just go away. Right. So there's these new ways of navigating whoever takes over the holidays. And if they bring in new family. And so, it can get really gray and murky and muddy, because again, there's that love, like Jeffrey said, that's lost, that has nowhere to go. And that was the only time of year where these people were really good at showing it. And now they're gone. And so I'm out here on the Oregon coast rewriting the holidays and creating rites and rituals for myself. I can finally step into, I am very pagan. So my thing is winter solstice, and I get to do that and do that my way and feel good about it. And then honor my loved ones, and that love that displaced in my own way. So it's very messy with all that gray and murky area of
messy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
it's because it's it's all about expectations, isn't it? Everything
Yes.
we all say is all about
Mhm.
expectations. The expectations that
Mhm.
are coming from the image that is sold to us, because actually it's a really quite commercial thing.
Yeah.
It has to be happy, it has to be joyful, it has to be family, it has to be big, it has to be glorious, there has to be a lot of richness and presence and whatever. But I think in a lot of families, it's actually quite a murky time because we
Yeah.
try all to keep up that image, um, and nobody dares to say, you know what, I'm stepping out because this is really bullshit.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
No,
you know,
it's true.
All saying a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we
you
all
nailed it.
right? Right? You know,
When you lose that constellation, when you
Right.
lose
Yes.
that constellation
Right.
Yes.
because people die or you step out, on the one hand there's a lot of loss and also residual loss and also collateral loss because you lose more than the people or the
Mhm.
person, or but there's also some kind of interesting endeavor, if you are willing to see it that way and you're courageous to see it that way, of making your own, stepping
Yeah.
into a new constellation where you are the sun and deciding how this constellation around you evolves and revolves. And that I find very interesting.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you really nailed it when you were talking about the expectations. So, our daughter died on Christmas Day. So,
That's so sad.
it's just fucked up, point blank.
Yeah,
And the expectation that we would jump back in and be excited about going to every family function. It's like, again, we are 9 years in, and every year it's very different. And we have been those people to say, you know what, we're not coming. I'm sorry. You know, feel how you feel about it. But also check your expectations of me at the door. You don't talk to me about this during the year at all. You just expect me to show up when it's the hardest time of the year for me. And
Because
so
it
I
makes them
think there's
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
because it makes them uncomfortable, and then we're in the
Mhm.
place of taking care of everybody else
yeah,
and their issues with our grief, and making sure
Mhm.
that they know that, you know, what we're choosing, it doesn't, it takes up the energy. And so, you know, our energy needs to be redirected to just plain old surviving. We don't have to
Well,
worry about anything
yeah.
else. It's not, I encourage people all the time, whether they've experienced a death or not, to really check in on how they would have wanted to spend the holidays in the first place, and then do that. And
Yeah.
everybody else can sit down and do whatever they can do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and the other thing with that, and you had mentioned, I think there are a couple of things. The expectation that the holidays are going to be a happy time and everybody's going to be happy. I can tell you from experience, I don't hang around with happy people anymore because 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 happiness. You look at it, everybody thinks to be functional. There's this expectation in society to be functional, you got to be happy. I think that's a bunch of bullshit
yeah.
because I think for us to be fulfilled is to be genuine, and that means you honor your anger, you honor your sadness, you honor your moments of joy. It all comprises a mosaic of emotions that we're going to walk at any time of the year, but particularly after catastrophic loss. And the other thing, as far as the holidays, I think we need to encourage individuals to have a flexible plan. They're
Right.
not going to have, they may not have the energy to do what they did before. They may not have the energy to do a family gathering. They
Of
may have
course.
to delegate tasks. They may, as Dee, as you mentioned, they may have to just accept the fact that the day that you wake up for a family gathering that you went to prior to your daughter's transition, you just may not have the energy to go on that day. And they need to accept it. You just may not have the emotional wherewithal, the energy, or just the 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 the, the stamina to be able to do
Spoons.
that. And
Yeah.
once
right.
you
And
need, and when you get there, you should have the flexibility and you should empower yourself to be able to leave. And we need to empower ourselves as much as we can in any grief, in any stage of grief, because loss by itself is disempowering, not only because of
right.
what it does to us internally, but because of everybody's reactions of, okay, you've grieved now, this is good. Let's move on and be happy, which is totally
Nonsense.
misguided. So
Nonsense.
I'm done. And I didn't mean to cut you off either, Dan. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. I just think I agree. Absolutely. And I think that, those who aren't experiencing this type of loss really would do themselves a whole favor in checking their expectations of themselves and thinking to themselves, what exactly would I be doing if I were this person? And then extend that grace to that person.
Yeah.
Because it's not their job to take care of you and your feelings because somebody's absent from the holiday. I have a permanent absence for the rest of this time. I may or may not show up today, tomorrow, next week. Catch me on the internet, y'all. You can see me all the time.
I've often encouraged families that, if it's going to be too intense, to set aside a room or somewhere where it's where people can go take a break.
Yeah.
And where there's a quiet space,
Yeah.
where you can feel free to withdraw, and you do not have to justify that to anybody. You just go, take a break. It's okay. We're not dancing bears where we have to just perform all the time because it's the holidays. That's that expectation thing again. We don't live in a commercial.
Right.
Life is much more complicated and lumpy. I keep using that word, but it often feels like that. We're not required to just perform for the sake of saving face. When really, if you'd rather your face were on the floor and you want to curl up and just be quiet for a while, be quiet for a while.
Yeah.
That's not it's not disrespectful to the family. It's not, it's just what you need for your own self-care. And there's reason people can do that.
Right. I think that brings the conversation of like what people really are doing when they're not in active grief. So,
Right.
reviewing what they've been taught about grief, why are we setting these ridiculously irrational expectations of people who are grieving? What is that? Why are we doing this to one another? Because even if it's across cultures or whatever, we have our own ways of celebrating the dead, our own ways of mourning, our own ways of performing ritual. Like you were saying, Amanda, it's you're pagan. And so celebrate in those ways and refrain from telling people, how they should grieve or how they should celebrate. Because a lot of times what I find is the act of telling somebody to let go of their loved one is the very thing that's going to push them over the edge. If I can't take them with me, then I'm not going. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Y'all go ahead. I'll catch y'all whenever. But I'll
That's
be
what
over
people
here.
don't understand, I think, is that if someone dies and you grieve them, you bring them along always. They are instilled in you. So you can't go anywhere without them. They are in you incorporated. And I think if we were able to be genuine in these holidays and not live up to these weird expectations, we would make it a celebration as the word is meant to. Celebrate is something sacred. It's not per se joyful or happy or fun. It's a celebration. It's sacred. And if you could be in a state where you could be joyful, but also have time to commiserate with the people who are not so joyful and commemorate their beloved with them, it would be so much more wholesome, and it would be much more complete as a celebration.
Sarah, Jenny, you guys want to add to any of this?
Sure.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'd really resonate with what Alexandra and Amanda said, as well as everybody else, in terms of creating something that I like how you want it to be. In my case, I was never able to have the children that I wanted. And so for a long time, you know, holidays, Christmas is all about family and kids. And so, if you don't have that, are you even allowed to, have the tree? What's the point of like all the, decorating and all the different things? And when you do it, it's just sort of like maybe a bit lackluster because there isn't that excitement, that you're not doing it for anybody else. So in the past few years for me, as the acuteness of my grief has sort of subsided, I'm really looking for ways to celebrate, and as Alexandra says, make it more of a sacred occasion, not just this sort of like yippee, joyful, happy kind of thing, but in a way that brings meaning to me and my husband. And so that might look like, we just talked about the other day, do we want a tree this year? And I would like a tree. I'd love the lights. I love the smell of it. And so we're going to get a tree, and I feel excited about it. In previous years, I've wanted a tree, but thought like, meh, well, who cares? Like, no, it's just for me. So that also ties in with doing what you want to do, whether that is going to the family gathering or not, it's taking with you and creating the celebration that you would like. So that's what I'm embracing this year.
The creativity and the playfulness, which can be lost in the sadness. And it's one of the most wholesome things to bring back into your life in some way or another. And it is quite okay to bring the joy of the playfulness of setting up a tree or creating decor or whatever, if you want that. But it also, I have had years, I've lost 20 people, so I'm done. I have years when my son is with his father with Christmas, I don't do anything. I really don't. I put a flower arrangement on my table, and that's it, Christmas. I don't do much. But there's also years where I think, oh yes, this is it, and I'm going all out. And it's okay if you let it roll as it comes. It doesn't have to be predestined.
It's going to take as long as it's going to take to get to get to certain points during the holidays. During one holiday, you might not be able to perform a particular task. The next one, it might come a little bit easier, but progress needs to be measured incrementally, and the people in our lives need to give us the patience and the room to allow that to happen. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Right. And the other thing is, you talked about, if somebody told me to move on from after my daughter passed, I probably would have lost my stance as a pacifist and got really angry really quick. But one of the things I've learned is that during the holidays, we have the opportunity to transform the relationship with our loved ones by creating some bonds or rituals that involve them, whether it's burning incense and listening to music playlist of music that you both share, then bringing them to memory, or doing a variety of other things that keep that relationship and spirit alive and that bond alive. That's going to help us, I think, find peace during the holidays as well too. That's when we're ready to do that, when we're ready to transform that relationship, and in that way, doing that, we are able to integrate our grief, and we carry the best parts of our loved ones within us, and then we rewrite our life narrative as a result of that during the holidays and all the year through.
Yeah. Jenny, you want to add anything to this?
So I've been listening, and expectations is coming to mind. We've talked about it already. There are expectations of others, and our others' expectations on us. We also have expectations for ourselves. That needs to be checked also.
Right.
Whether you're listening to expectations of others or going on your past history of what you've done or behaviors. And like we've said, each moment is different, each day is different. So we can start where we are today. Okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I can reasonably expect of myself. That's not going to overwhelm me. That's doable.
Yeah. Now, for a lot of us, I'm just going off of some of the questions that I have written down. Amanda said something earlier when we were talking about self-care, which is really important throughout the holidays, especially for the bereaved. What are some ways that that you guys have, practiced the art of self-care throughout the holidays dealing with your grief?
Well, since self-care is my jam, and I'm actually teaching a self-care to stay sane during the holidays workshop this Thursday that's free. But I think the biggest thing for me, again, now that I'm on my own and I get to kind of step into my own identity and I don't have other people telling me what I have to do for the holiday, but I'm missing those big expressions of love from those people that I've lost, creating my own rituals and rites and making sure that I'm taking care of myself. And we talked about expectations of ourselves. And I think that's, where we can set ourselves up for good self-care is, what do I expect of myself? Where am I going to set my healthy boundaries, right? And healthy boundaries are a big part of holiday self-care when we're grieving, right? And having that flexibility and that grace and that compassion. But the biggest ones for me are, what do I need out of this holiday? So again, being pagan, like my mom was just here. I had surgery in October and I wanted her to help me decorate for Halloween. She doesn't care for Halloween. I do. And I needed that help because I was recovering from surgery. And it's like, this is the one thing I want you to help me do before you go back home, because it matters to me. My mantle is still decorated for Halloween and it might stay that way. We'll see. But I also have a remembrance shelf in my living room. And so my grandpas are on the top shelf. My dad is on the second shelf. My grandmas are on the next shelf. And then I have pets on the shelf below that and friends on the bottom shelf. And if I decorate for the holidays, it might be things for them, right? Like trinkets or things, again, because those are the people that I miss the most at the holidays. But for me, it's about setting healthy boundaries, knowing my limits, giving myself a ton of grace and compassion, and then making sure I'm not stuffing my emotions. So good emotional self-care, because if we stuff our emotions or we don't feel the feelings, they come out physically. So then we've done our body harm, and just really making sure that I express what expectations I have of others, whether that's in work or with family or friends, and stating what I need, asking for what I need. People are uncomfortable with grief and they also don't know how to read our minds. So if we have needs, get comfortable expressing them, asking for what we need, and setting those healthy boundaries.
I call that loving assertiveness. Being lovingly assertive.
Right.
We need to understand that wholesome or healthy boundaries, we set them by telling other people, and we don't have to be rude in that, but we have to be firm. So be lovingly assertive. I love you, but this I cannot do for you now.
Yep.
I think that's super important
Beautifully well said.
because grief is it's not like a broken arm with a cast on it where people can see, oh, okay, I shouldn't, bump into your arm because it's broken. It's something internalized, and if you don't express it, people don't know the weight that you're carrying, and that you're in some ways still not wholehearted and still not fully present and still not capable of either small stuff, big stuff, whatever it happens to be. So it's super important to express, although this is not, that you can't see this, I'm expressing what's inside. So, what's going on. So that we can have some kind of healthy interaction.
Right.
I love that expression, still not wholehearted. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about dealing with the after, like the sense of guilt? Like for me, for the longest time, you know, people would invite me places over the holidays, and I understood what they were doing. I just, you know, I just was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to go out there and seem like I'm happy after I've just lost my son, you know, or I've just lost my mother, or you know, I just didn't want to do it. And then there was a part of me that was going, you know what? I think it'd be really nice to be around people this year. But also there was another thing that came into play was the triggers, right? Something that I was very unaware of going into it. I was like being around my friends that had kids and everything. And I realized real quick when I got around them that I couldn't do it. I didn't have the strength, right? But I also didn't know how to communicate. So I would find myself in a corner somewhere and I would just watch people because, you know, it was like, wow, I would like to have my kid here to be able to do this because, you know, my kid would love to play with these kids as well. And then it was like, man, you know, like I just want to leave. I just want to leave. But then again, it was one of those things like expectations. People expect me to be the wrong one, right? They expect me to still be holding my head up. For some reason, everybody thought I was bulletproof. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not bulletproof. It sucks really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The psychosis of emotions, isn't it?
It's very intense.
The yearning to belong, and the moment you are in the group, you are triggered to face your loss again because there's an empty spot where your beloved should be.
Right.
So we're always torn between the two elements of seeking belonging and wanting to stay out of the trigger zone.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's important to find, or at least to work at finding some sense of balance or safety within that. If you're feeling that you can't cope right now, you're not required to. And the people who care about you are not going to want you to sit there and force yourself to suffer because you feel obligated to them. And so to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna scoot. And even to just share, I thought this was gonna be better, and it's just not. And if people throw shade or judgment about that, that's not on you.
People are going to see you the way that people are going to see you the way they want to see you anyway. So it really doesn't matter, no matter what you do. And it's got to be, you have to do what's in your heart. And I think the other thing is, I think, you know, when Tony mentioned triggers, I think one of the things is sit down before the holiday. Now, you can't anticipate all the triggers, but prioritize which triggers you think are going to be the most profound. Have a plan to manage that. And if need be, if one of those triggers is, hey, I'm not sure I could stay at a function I used to stay at prior to my loved one's death, is to communicate that to the host and say, look, I need some flexibility. And if you can't communicate it by yourself, have somebody come with you as a means of support to help them do that with you. The other thing, and Amanda mentioned boundaries, and I got to mention this, there's a book called Medicine Cards by Jamie Sams, who is a Native American elder. She recently passed away in 2020. And she wrote a book about that. Basically, she compiled teachings of animals from all the Native American tribal nations and put it together in a book. The armadillo is about boundaries. And she has a really cool exercise. And I suggest this to people who, before the holidays, take a sheet of paper, draw a circle. On the outside are those experiences you're unwilling to experience during this holiday season. Inside the circle are the experiences you're willing to experience during this holiday season, or your needs, whether it be flexibility, understanding. And next year, do the same thing and see which needs that were once outside of the circle or experiences go inside of the circle, and the experiences in the previous year that were inside go outside. This also honors the fluidity of our grief, the the different stops and starts and progress as well too by doing it. And some people are very good visual learners, and they need to have those visual prompts to actually see progress and see,
Yeah.
where they are from year to year. So I had to throw that out there too, just,
Yeah.
just for that.
That's
So,
why I always recommend journaling to my clients. Journal, journal, journal.
yep.
Because it's a ventilation of your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts. But when you feel really down, read back from where you began to write and where you are now, and you will see how much progress you've made and how important it is to keep track of that. Because we always have moments where we feel I don't know, it's been 4 years and I'm still there at that point where I don't want to be. But
Yep.
if you journal, you can see how much progress you've made, how much growth you've had, how much healing you have.
And even if you haven't made as much progress as you maybe think you should, that's still okay.
That's still okay.
Yeah.
But it's always more than you think it is. It's always more.
Yeah.
Well, and Tony said a word. You said guilt.
Yeah.
The definition of guilt is that you have committed an offense or a crime. So I'm going to encourage you. Your grief is not an offense or a crime. So get rid of that guilt. You are not committing any kind of offense or crime for having grief.
Well, it's not it's not feeling like I committed a crime against someone. It was the guilt of being happy without the person in my life that was the source of my happiness, right? So it's like, when I was with my son, it was always him and I, all the time. It was him and I. Holidays, every day, school, work, you name it. It was always him and I. So when he passed away, there was a part of me that didn't want to be there anymore, right? And then there was a part of me that wanted to do something to make myself happy, but I always felt as if I was disrespecting the people that were gone, because now you have to remember, this was before I got into with the work that I'm doing now. So I have a better understanding now than I ever did. And so now I understand there is no guilt. It was my own self. But for those out there, that guilt is very, very prominent. They want to be around people. They want to be happy, and as soon as they start doing it, it's like, it's something inside of them that makes them back up and go, oh, man, I wonder if someone's watching me be happy right now. Are they going to judge me?
Yeah.
Right? Are they going to judge me? What are people going to think if they see me out here cutting a rug on the dance floor?
Or that's expectations again.
Right.
It's
seen that.
Right.
It's somebody else is expecting.
Right. But it's also that sense of guilt. It's that sense of shame. Right. And then it's like when you see other people, the first thing that comes to mind is, man, my child used to play with their children. I wonder what they're thinking of me. Right. It's the judgmental, it's the guilt. And then you want to go over it. You want to express yourself to them in a really good way, being happy and everything. But then again, that psyche jumps in and goes, hey, if you do that, they may look at this as this right here, so then you stop, right? So that communication is everything that's piled into one another that hits you right back to back. Yeah. And for most people, if they aren't doing this sort of work and they're on the outside, of course, that is like a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, shame, all of these different things that just, it doesn't stop. It's just like boom, 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 boom. And then at the end of the day, you're lonely, right? Yeah. And then you feel guilty for feeling the way that you were, right? So it's like, okay, you can compile all of these things on top of all of that. And it's real easy to build a spider web to catch yourself into.
Yes.
It's real easy to do. What I've learned over a period of time is that I didn't have to spin that spider web. I had a choice. And I can make a choice whether or not if I want to go to this place or if I want to do these things, and I don't feel bad about it anymore. I just figure everybody's just going to get used to it. You're going to get used to me not being there, period. And I'm not going to feel bad because you brought me presents. I'm not going to feel bad because you brought me presents, right? And I used to feel bad a long time ago because my friends' kids used to always go, Tony, we buy you presents. Why don't you buy us presents, right? And I get it. I really got it, but I had to look at it from a different point of view. They're looking at it from a child's point of view, and the holidays are happy, full of presents, right? the reality I was living in is that my son is not here anymore.
Mhm.
I have a difficult time going to the toy aisle to pick up presents. I do apologize, but then I stopped apologizing for that as well. I really did. I go, I am not here to make you feel better about my loss. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I still have to deal with this, and you only have a moment where you want me to be something that I'm not, and I don't have the strength to do it. I don't have the mental fortitude to deal with that. So what I'm going to do respectfully is that I'm just not going to show up.
Mhm.
I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather spend my holidays alone than to spend it around people who expect me.
Yeah.
Expect me to show up as Tony, right? That's not going to
Right.
happen. That's not going to happen. Tony left the building a long time ago. We're not. We're not doing this anymore. We're not going to do this. I mean, but over a period of time, I do. One of the things I am working towards, is being able to engage with others around the holidays. Accepting an invitation and showing up just to be there, just to be around people. And it happens from time to time. But until that time comes, no, I'm not, no. And people shouldn't feel guilty about that as well.
No.
Right.
Absolutely not. I think
That's-
our thing that we've been doing is just a flat out. I am at this point right now where I'm like, I'm not accepting any invitations. They can all come in. I know what days they are. I need to check in with my unit first. We do have 2 living children and my spouse. And so I check the temperature here first. What do y'all want to do? And if it's something off the wall, then that's what we're going to plan to do because it's for us. It's for us.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's point blank. That's it. And we can invite whomever if they want to come, come. If you don't want to come, don't come. But also, you'll see us after the first of the year. I usually shut down and I don't, do a lot. I don't accept invitations if I don't have to. I'm very well aware. Please send me all the invitations. I'm happy to know that you're celebrating, but also, I will likely not say yes.
Mhm.
So, and I never feel guilty anymore about, in the early days, I was putting a lot of stress on myself to like, oh, you need to get out of the house because you need the distraction. And then I learned that a distraction doesn't do anything for me in particular. For me in particular, I need to deal with what's going on right now. Or otherwise, this whole thing's going to come crumbling down.
You're not complete enough to be divided.
Right. Right. And I can't be everywhere at once. I don't want to be everywhere at once. I want to be where I'm at. And I want to enjoy where I'm at. And whether we are as far as self-care is concerned, I spend a lot of time at my altars. I'm changing things over. I'm feeding them. I am, doing what I have to do, things that comfort me first, and then I can tend to everybody else. If I haven't tended to those things, it's not going to go well. I already know this. It's like I can set a clock by my grief pretty much, and I'm very well aware of it. And that's, I think, a thing that a lot of people who are not actively grieving don't understand how much energy goes into the planning of it. So by the time you get to that day, the night before, whatever, you were exhausted. Like this is too much. And so anticipating those times where you have to say no and their response to it. I don't even anticipate that anymore. You feel how you feel. I'm so sorry for you. Like,
Yeah,
I hope you feel better. Please light a candle or something.
yeah. Sort of the common thread here is sort of giving yourself space, right? And meeting yourself where you're at, and meeting yourself with self-compassion, however that sort of shows up. And hopefully your friends and loved ones, hopefully you have those kinds of relationships where you can say, hey, I know I said I'd come, but actually I can't do it today, and hopefully they would have the understanding that everybody, all of us, have complex and competing emotions. You know, on one hand, yes, we want to go to the celebration to have the belonging, but on the other hand, it's too much. We can't handle it. And so there has to be that space in there for us and for others to just sort of to see how it feels in the moment.
To experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking, Tony, when you were talking about guilt, guilt doesn't necessarily the seeds don't necessarily have to be planted with that, just with a particular loss or how we react to having to be everywhere or trying to please everybody and feeling guilty if we don't. I mean, a lot of it could be family history. Let's say you had somebody that came from a very unhealthy family dynamic where one or both parents were addicted, and that only the oldest child took the role of the hero and the to try to bring achievement to the family mantle, to try to bring some joy or even distract the family from the other dynamics that were going on. And you topped grief on top of that. If you have unresolved guilt from the perfectionistic expectations or not meeting those, and you throw grief on top of that, that can also be a very daunting task. And when I tell individuals to be gentle with themselves, be gentle, because you didn't have any control over the history who your family you were born into, or the circumstances that contributed to it. Just be gentle with yourself, and let's try to understand these dynamics and work through it, and realize that maybe doing your best is good enough,
Right.
as opposed to having to be perfect.
Yeah.
There's also the flip of, if you feel like going and celebrating and you feel good about it, do that.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because I've certainly seen people, we all know this, people grieve in different ways, but I'm just thinking of a friend of mine whose child passed, and they came from a family where they didn't do funerals and wakes and wearing black and all of the doleful things. They did life celebrations. And so she came to the funeral in this beautiful dress, and people turned on her and said, "Oh my God, you're celebrating the death of your child." And she went, "Whoa, whoa, 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 wait, what? I'm sorry. What are you talking about?" She had no experience with that, with the somber piece that we're supposed to do. She was doing what her family did. And I was conducting that funeral, so I was trying to make the peace between everybody. But it can be the judgment, that spotlight of shame and judgment can be very harsh, and to have that swung at you, and knowing what your family dynamic might be, and you can feel that coming. My clients are just starting to say, "Oh yeah, I don't want to deal with that. If you don't come, then you're disrespectful," and all of that. And there become lots of "how dare yous" and dirty looks, and it's just the ep, 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 ep behind your back, that you can just feel it. And boy, sitting in that is very, very uncomfortable. And a lot of that struggle, I can feel it coming. Where people are going, "Do I have to?" I'm like, "No, you really don't." It's because people are going to ep, ep, ep.
Yeah, I mean, what you do. But I think a lot of people think that when their beloved dies, if they ever feel happy again, it's a shame or a sin.
Yes.
I see a lot of people say, "I will never be happy again," or "I will grieve forever." And it always makes me sad, because in my personal experience, however overwhelming grief might seem, it's just one element of life. And parallel to it are all other elements of life. You can be deep in grief and still enjoy a beautiful piece of music, or a walk in the park, or a special bird you see, or the strokes you give to your dog, or the comfort of other people around you. You can be deep in grief over the loss of your spouse and find a very intimate and important new friendship with someone, even an intimacy with someone. I think, again, it's all about expectations that we put on ourselves or the expectations we have of the expectations of other people about us. And when we let that go and just be in the moment and feel whatever if we feel in all its complexity and in all its diversity, we heal ourselves better. There's no need to be in grief all the time. You can be in grief one moment and laugh at a joke another moment. That's just fine.
Yeah, I think that's what people get caught up at, is that moment right there, coming out of that moment and not feeling guilty for being happy. And I know I've struggled with that as well. I know a lot of people who have first timers, right? First timers, or even people who've been doing it for a couple of years now. I still have those moments. And so I want everybody to understand that these moments do come and go. Beginning, yes, it's a little bit more tougher, but it all depends on the individual. It's becoming a victim. The woe is me, right? You know what I'm saying? Oh, you don't know what I'm going through right now. You're absolutely right. We don't. Even from someone who has gone through it, no, we don't understand what the next person's going through. Right. The difference is that we could take what we've gone through and kind of sprinkle it to the person that's going through it, so maybe they can take pieces of it to help them.
Yeah, to inspire.
Right, to inspire them to do something. But it was a lot of that there, going through, like, man, you don't know what I'm feeling right now. I guess on the other side of it, I wanted someone to desperately tell me that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
That, what I'm saying, that all of these things happen. Tell me that this is normal, right? Tell me that someone else out here understands what I'm going through. But until that time, well, this is what it is. I am mad. I am a victim right now. I'm not a victim, but in those moments, I felt like a victim, like someone just took everything away from me, right?
You have your right to lamenting.
And
you have
I wanted
right to lamenting.
Yeah, but I wanted someone to tell me it was okay to be a victim, right?
Yeah.
And that was okay for me to be in the place that I was in at that moment. And so those, especially as being a man, for those men out there going through it right now, it's totally normal. It really honestly is. I struggled with it. And I know most men have struggled with it because it's a whole different set of rules that no one ever taught us. It's like, oh, we're going to play a game, but we're not going to tell you the rules.
Yeah.
But we have the rules over here, right?
Right.
So you're going to have to figure out the rules. But if we tell you that you did something wrong, then we're going to, you're just going to have to take our word for it. And I found that it was pretty much the same way. It was like, man, I'm a victim. Look, I'm playing a game that no one told me the rules about. So what do I do from here?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's still not popping up.
There's something that occurs to me that I've never really thought about before as I'm listening to so many different experiences and so many wise people speaking, and I really appreciate being included in this group, is the similarities between grieving and depression. Right.
Yes.
It's never occurred to me, but it just seems there are so many parallels to the experiences, with, the level of energy that you have, the participation, the waves that it comes, the desire to be in an event and then dropping out, and the heaviness of it. I hadn't really considered that, but there really is a lot of similarity between the two.
Well, I have a very different approach to depression than most people. I believe that every depression has a grief experience, a loss at its base. So if you see it like that, I think a depression, with an exception for the chemical disbalance that sometimes causes depression, that's a whole other game, and it needs medication. But I think in most cases, depression should be treated as a grieving over a loss, a process of grieving.
Mm.
And if you see it that way, you understand how to heal a depression. And I will never tell anybody not to take medication, not to see a doctor. Please do. If you need that, that's just fine. You don't have to do it on your own. But if you understand that at the base of your depression, there's loss and trauma and grief, it makes it so much easier to understand what you have to do to provide yourself with a healthy situation to heal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The the essence of or the having been through both and now seeing the parallels to them, and more recently was a depression experience. The route out for me was heavily supported by self-care. I mean, it really that was a lot of how I found my way out was self-care and supporting myself in whatever ways that I was able to listen to, because I became a little deafer. I became a little more unaware, and at the same time more highly sensitized.
Yeah. You get numb with raw nerves.
Yes.
That's depression.
Yeah.
It was that depression, finding ways of coping with it for the most part, right? And I've seen, like, talking with the men that I do, most people, I'm not going to just categorize one or the other, but most people do find they self-medicate. And sometimes it don't go too well. Alcohol was my biggest thing before I got clean, but I'm a bad alcoholic. So I knew that was one of the things that if I did go down that rabbit hole, I wasn't coming back, because that was always my go-to. Whenever I was going through something bad, was to grab a bottle, get slosh face, and go out there and see what the world had to offer. And a lot of times it didn't end well. A lot of times it just didn't end well. So that was something, when I talk to these men, they're like, how do I, what's the next steps? And I go, well, you might not want to hear this or not, but the next step is you might want to put that down for a little bit. Not saying that you need to quit, but put that down for a little bit. That way you're not fighting yourself. It's like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing. The alcohol comes in, you're a totally different person than what you were, but you're ruled by the emotions that are going on with you. So of course that takes that to a whole new level of trying to deal with what's going on, right?
I think substances is what men do, where women tend to start cutting themselves. It's creating a hurt that is so big that you don't feel the other pain.
Well, I think the other thing with I was thinking with as you were talking about self-medicating, one is if you're also taking prescription drugs with alcohol, you're talking about, and particularly if you're talking about drugs that have a tranquilizing effect, you're talking about putting yourself in a potential overdose situation, accidental overdose. The second thing is I'm going to quote this line from A Fault in Our Stars. I think it was a male protagonist that said, pain is meant to be felt. And if we self-medicate, we can't feel the pain of grief. We must feel that pain in order to work through that pain.
Yeah.
And what alcohol will do is will delay that expression.
Exactly.
The other thing, over a period of time, if you're self-medicating, let's say for a year, that's going to delay grief. So that once you remove yourself from the alcohol, it could be 3 years later, but you're going to be grieving as if it was day one of your grief.
Right.
And that's the other piece. We talk about self-medicating with, that delays grief, that suppresses the expression of pain, which is necessary to work through loss, and mixing it with other medications, which can put us in an accidental overdose situation.
Or create more grief, because when we do that, we lose.
Yeah, because alcohol is a central nervous system.
We lose jobs, we lose companions, we lose our house, we lose everything.
Those
Yeah.
bad
And it
decisions.
only creates more loss.
Yeah.
There's definitely
Well,
those bad decisions that get you. You know, I
I'd
know.
like to
Go
take
ahead.
the alcohol piece and sort of lead that back to the holidays topic, because food is central to the holidays,
Hmm.
and in so many ways it's woven into our grieving and our losses, because very often, there's family traditions, or what if it was grandma who always made this particular recipe, or as Amanda said, we always went to grandma's house. Well, now what? Or grandma was the glue, or the favorite aunt who made the best stuffing. Well, she's not there. Well, how do we do that? So how the food aspect gets woven throughout all of these holidays can be very triggering by itself. There's the triggering aspect. There's well, nobody quite made it like mom did. Or there's all of the uncomfortableness that goes with it, and then pass the rum. And because this is the piece about these heightened events in our lives, whether it's weddings or funerals or holidays or whatever it is. Those stick because they happen less often. It's not just like Sunday dinner. It's once a year, or it's just when someone gets married. But boy, if those go off the rails, that stays in the family lore for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's very often, when sometimes I have a family memory of a recipe that went really, really, not me, just so it's clear, not me, I didn't cook it, but but a recipe that went really awry, where everybody was sort of horrified at the table, but nobody knew what to say because this person was ill and didn't know what they were doing anymore.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's so the food is so interwoven into all of the holidays and how that changes, and to be able to give ourselves and our families permission to say these traditions can change. It's okay if they change. And let's maybe one way that you remember a family member is you give out the recipe cards and everybody brings a dish that
Yeah.
grandma used to make, something like that. So she is still present. She is remembered. You tell a story about the casserole. And all of a sudden the casserole that nobody really liked, but you connect it with grandma, and it's okay to tell that story. And so the food piece becomes so integral to the holidays, was kind of my point.
Yeah. Traditions are anchors. And
Yes.
that's why it's so difficult to leave them behind and create new. Because if you leave your anchor behind, you're adrift for a while until you make your new anchor.
And to make a new anchor.
Yeah, it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
What about the average person that deals with the anger that comes along with it? Because for me, I can become very angry if I'm not controlled. If I don't control this up here, I have a past, and it's real easy for me to go back to something familiar. So what I've done was that I did something that I used to do a long time ago, was go to the gym. And I know a lot of MMA fighters, and so I enjoy getting out there and going on the mat with those guys and just going for it, and I feel that it's a healthier way, because now I'm around people who understand, who can kind of roll with me as I go, right? So one of those things, and it's a lot better. And I know a lot of people who do get angry, and the first thing that they do is they'll start looking for confrontations. And I try to coax them. I'm just like, hey, instead of looking for confrontations with other people, how about we go and find a different outlet to where you can get that off? Because even after the day, if that is still a part of you, you're going to carry that around, and it's going to take someone, because we go in and out of these little moments, right? And sometimes we get caught, and somebody catches us in that moment where we're in, And coming out is the most difficult thing because now you're in fight mode. There's no flight. I can't speak for everyone, but you're in fight mode. You're just like, you know what? This is what we're going to do right now. I'm going to put these two things on you, and you're going to be mad. But then that never works out for anyone, right? You know, not for the person that you fight or for yourself, because something you're going to have consequences behind it. But I do run across men who see it from that perspective. They're like, you know what? The next person tells me anything about how I need to act or anything like that, I'm gonna punch them in their mouth because they don't even know what I'm going through. And I go, well, if you got to punch somebody, punch me.
We talked about that before, didn't we? About men have a lack of emotional vocabulary. Men don't have the vocabulary for emotions that women have. So and we teach our boys, willingly or not, to not cry, but also to not be aggressive or angry. So they have so little options. We don't give them options to express their feelings, whatever they are. They don't have the words for it, and they don't have the outlet for it. So it becomes anger. Aggression is
and I think to the culture surrounding anger in general is that it's not okay to feel this anger, and you're feeling this anger, but it's just your grief talking. Sometimes it's just plain anger. I'm angry that my child is dead. I'm angry that my father dropped dead and I didn't get to talk to him. I'm angry. And that's okay. And like you were saying, Tony, is finding those outlets for yourself and knowing that you can redirect this anger. You don't have to get rid of it. You don't have to put it down. You can be mad. Go ahead and be mad because that's valid. It's accurate, and it is a normal response to horrible things happening to you. So, you know, I am very careful about when folks are saying that they're angry and trying to redirect their anger. So it's appropriate. Yeah. And I'm so sorry, and I hate this for you. And how can we find some way, like you were saying, to kind of redirect that? Yeah, you don't want to go shooting up the neighborhood.
No. But it's being
don't do that.
It's being aware of it's being self-aware as well, right? You know, if you understand, if you can connect the dots between yourself, you know that this is a possibility for you, and in these moments, it's heightened. So in those moments where if you can realize what's going on, you can do something to yourself. Like you can come up with something to kind of bring you back to where you need to be. And go, okay, I know that I'm here right now. So what I need to do is that I need to go and do this. And it doesn't matter, you know, as long as I feel as long as you're not hurting anyone or yourself, do something that's familiar to you. Now, most people like myself, I'm better at going to the gym, you know, being an ex-MMA fighter. I love the fact of going in there. It's the battle dog in me, right? But in those moments where it's heightened, that battle dog is not there. Now I'm a warrior. I'm ready to go to war with someone, but I choose people who get it.
Yeah. You know, well, people who can hold space for that, people who will not let themselves be injured because of your reaction to a thing. So, you know, I am prone to anger, and, you know, the way that I redirect this is going axe throwing or, you know, throwing knives, shooting my bow and arrow. Sometimes destruction is the response, and it moves that energy out of your body into this other object. And so it has its place. And we need to do better about teaching our youth and ourselves, even just reconditioning, is that anger is okay. What you do with your anger is an issue. That is the point. It's like that's the decision maker. That's where, you know, you may end up in jail. You may hurt somebody that you don't want to hurt because you were so angry and you couldn't, you know, as you were saying, tell yourself, this is where I'm at right now, and I've given everybody a fair warning, but I'm still pissed off and I'm about to explode. And that is just a reality. It's not, it's a reality for a lot of people that anger comes up as destruction.
Yeah.
And that may
Yeah.
and that may happen at some holiday gathering.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
Somebody gets angry.
Yeah.
and the
Just like you had alcohol.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When
yeah,
you have a combination, it's a perfect storm, right?
Like, exactly.
Holidays are already there. You're already wearing a fake mask. So, when you break it down, you're already wearing a fake mask. So now you're living in other people's expectations, which is going to be a conflict of interest for you.
Yeah.
So now when all of this goes on, everybody's happy, the dancing, the alcohol is going, the food is going, everybody is, they feeling themselves. But then there's you, right? The griever.
And
Everybody's
there's
gonna grieve
also
in different ways.
these are the situations where you have a lot of toxic relationship issues coming. The uncle with the unfortunate political stance. The nephew with his weird ideas about women. There's things come up. Your big sister who always belittles you.
Well, yeah.
Things come up, and then you fly off the handle. So redirecting your anger in a healthy way is a very big part of self-care.
And I think if we can learn to redirect our anger in a healthy way, that becomes an asset rather than a liability.
Yeah,
but we also have to look at the gift of just pure anger, as long as it isn't, again, hurting somebody else. That anger may have given us the energy to set a boundary with somebody we couldn't set. It might have given us the energy to get through a particular moment. So we also have to take a look at the yin and the yang of that. The second thing is, I got to say this for what Alexandra was saying about the differences between the men don't have a vocabulary of grief and women will tend to be more emotive and wear their emotions. I think men feel just as intensely as women about but we just deal with it differently. We distract ourselves from our grief through activity. I tell women, I said, if the men in your life are out, all of a sudden they're building an addition on your house after a grief, they're hurting. And so they're trying to find some ways to distract themselves.
Yeah.
For
That's
men,
redirecting.
we're in our heads a lot. I can ask a guy, tell me what you're thinking. If he says this sucks, I could, well, tell me how you feel because it sucks. Well, I'm angry. I'm disappointed. That's how you get to their feelings in kind of a backdoor way. The other thing too is Ken Doka, who's I think from upstate New York. He's done a lot of work with men's grief and a lot of aspects related to grief. He talked about instrumental versus intuitive males, where the intuitive males are very feeling oriented. The instrumental males are the traditional sex role conditioning expectations for men and feelings. But in reality, probably about, I think 75% of men will kind of fit that traditional instrumental stereotype. But everybody's different. But I mean, for the most part, you're going to see those trends, but there's always exceptions. And I always tell individuals, make sure you look out for the exceptions as well too. So but tell a guy,
there's also women who grieve in a masculine way.
That's right. So ask a guy most of the time how they're thinking. We'll tell you. If you're gonna, and our feelings will follow that. It's kind of just a backdoor way to get through that.
That's true.
In I don't know if you're familiar with David Hawkins and the levels of consciousness and how different emotions have energy. But when you start the kind of lowest level of emotion and energy is shame, right? It's a place where it's hard. You're kind of like in this tar pit and it's hard to get out. And then moving up, you get into guilt, you get into grief, and you get into fear. And the first emotion you encounter that actually has energy that can move you further up, all the way up, depending on how you direct it in the direction of acceptance and bliss and things like that, is anger. Right? So, grief doesn't have an energy that can propel you out. So anger has a use, as you were saying.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yes.
Anger is a life force, like love is.
Yep.
So it's very important to find an outlet that actually enhances your situation in any way. And that's the difficulty, because we mostly think of anger as a destruction. And if you destruct the situation, you need to leave, it's also important to elevate that to construction of a new situation you have to pass through.
That's very true. It's,
And there are a lot of families where just emotions are just taught that all emotions, sadness, anger, all of these things, those explosive things are not acceptable to express. And I've had so many folks who they've been through so much, but their affect is flat because they have been, and they will say that they have been taught, I'm not supposed to show, be seen and not heard, etc. And it's not just women either. But all of that, but they come up against this immovable object, and it's usually not the only one in their wake, where they know something needs to come out, but they have no idea how that's supposed to happen. So that was one thing that was running through my head. I wanted to just briefly offer a solution for folks who have, shall we say, challenging family dynamics to deal with, is that there's extraordinary power in family of choice. And if you need to go to a family event, or even if you decide not to, you can construct one with the folks who are your tribe. And tribe is in so many ways more powerful because we choose one another, we gravitate to one another. And that can be a healing space, and it can be on Zoom, to gather with like-minded folk where you don't have those pressures and family baggage and Aunt Susie's nonsense to deal with, where you can just be yourself, share time and space, have a Zoom giving.
Yeah, a lot of times that pressure,
yeah, exactly. Where
that pressure isn't there. It's like I can just be in this space, which is why I think it's so important for us to keep having these conversations about that, because strangers have saved me on occasion because they can listen. They can hear me. They can hear me say I'm angry and not be worried that I'm going to burn the city down. They're like, damn, that's valid. You have a real reason to be angry.
Absolutely.
And they're not trying to talk me out of it. They're not trying to say, what would she want you to do? She would want me to burn the city down. That's my answer. Appropriately so, and so it's really interesting when we say these things, because we have all of these outside, pressures and these outside, like, you should be grieving this way, you shouldn't be angry, they wouldn't want you to do, crapshoot, like it's really tough. And especially being in places where you're working on your things and nobody else is working on their things, and they think you're the crazy one because you're still in your grief, you're still doing this thing. Every time I see you, you're doing this thing. And I'm like, well, you obviously don't see me very often, because I do have a lot of joy, I do have a lot of laughter, I facilitate circus camps and like all kinds of really fun things in my life, but there's always this grief that's with me everywhere I go.
Of course. And Brene Brown says, if you're not in the arena, I'm not interested in your feedback.
Exactly. I don't really care what you have to say about it, because you're not doing it. So go ahead and sit down over there. And when it's your turn, you already know you're going to have somebody who understands you. You're not going to have to look far.
But I think that's where our roles as grief workers is. We come in, we understand that being mindful with others that are going through it. Like, no one actually no one gets to where we are without the work. Right. You know what I'm saying? We don't obtain that knowledge without the work. So, and that was one of the things that I had to be mindful of too. Just because I'm at a certain place, I can't expect everybody else to be there. And I don't want to rush the process with them neither. I definitely don't want to rush the process, because I was pretty fortunate. It just started making sense to me and I followed that path. But not everybody is destined to do this sort of work. Right? Those of we sitting on this panel, we have a deeper understanding because this work has opened up the doors for us. And it has taught us things that most people on the outside looking in wouldn't even understand. But this is what makes us good at the job that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking to someone that don't have that experience, that well, they have the experience, but they don't have the tools, right, or the communication to be able to tell me exactly what's going on, that's when that mindfulness come in. I have to be in that moment with them, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'm able to walk with them just a little bit more. I'm able to sit with them in those darkest moments without judgment. But also in those darkest moments with them, I'm able to help them feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
enough to where they don't feel like they have to backpedal. They don't feel like they have to come out and be defensive. So holding that space with them. And so those out there that are listening to us, trust us when we say we don't expect y'all to be where we are.
Yeah.
And we really
Right.
don't. That's a long, hard road. And if this is something that you want to do, it'll take you there. You figure it out along the way, but you have good people around you that can help guide you. But for the average Joe out there, yeah, it's a hard walk because they don't think the way that we do. They're not in a place of self-awareness. They're not aware of their mental health. They're not aware of their own behaviors, because after a while it becomes embedded, and you can either playing a victim or you're playing a bad guy in someone else's life, right? Very seldom that you pull yourself out and become your own superhero in your own life. But that's what we want for everyone, to become that superhero in your grief. Look at your grief and go, look, I know you're not going anywhere, but in this moment, I'm going to respect you and sit with you. And I'm going to do whatever is necessary in order for me to get to the next moment, and not look at it in the long term, but chunk those things up in small moments. Small moments. You can deal with them so much better. It's like taking a huge puzzle and taking it all apart, and now you got a mixture of things, but all you need is that one piece to start. And it could be that small, or it could be that big. You just pull it out and you go, this is where I'm going to start at, and then you build everything around that.
Look for the corners.
Yes, look for the corners, work your way in. That is actually our time. I want to take a few minutes and give you guys a minute or so to tell people where they can find you at. Alexander?
Oh, me. Okay. Well, you can find me at Facebook. I'm a Facebook person, not by choice, but because it works. You can find me at alexandramaas.com, so no dot. Facebook.com/alexandramaas.com. Or you can find me at Cup of Grief. That's my private group there. And you can always find me.
Amanda?
Yeah, so you can find me I do have a Facebook biz page, but I don't do a lot there. So Instagram, I'm dabbling in TikTok, but I got to get better. So everything's under Value Yourself Counseling, or the easiest place to kind of find all the things I have going on, including my latest offers and how to book things with me, is my campsite bio site. So campsite.bio/VYC, obviously stands for Value Yourself Counseling. So campsite.bio/VYC. And that's the easiest way to kind of find, again, all my offers and websites, or under Value Yourself Counseling.
All right. Claire?
So I can be found at youcanhealyourgrief.com, and that's where you can find my book. And I have Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram are the places where I hang out. And as I mentioned, I am doing my own holiday grief piece. I believe I'm going to plop that into December 14th in the evening. I call it the empty chair. And so look for notifications about that. And demystifying, destigmatizing grief and trauma so that healing is available to as many people as possible. And we can have more holidays together.
Awesome. Sarah?
Yeah, you can find me at Embodied Possibility. So that's on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as my website is Embodied Possibility. And in all of those places, I have a free resource for women who are childless not by choice called Reclaim the Holidays.
Jenny?
You can find me at grievingcoach.com or both. Send. I also host the podcast Share Your Story, exploring humanity one heart at a time. So either of those places you can find me, and be gentle with yourself through this holiday season. That's one gift that grief gives us, is the opportunity to reassess our lives. So take advantage of it.
Dave?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And my son calls me the world's oldest millennial, so I'm all over the place on social media. Um, and I'm going to find a shirt that says that at some point. I also have Bootsy and Angel Books LLC. That's my personal website. It's a Facebook page, and also a website or Facebook page and Instagram page dedicated to when the psychology professor met the minister. You can find me through all those outlets, and also email psychology professor and minister at gmail.com. So there's a variety of different ways to get in touch with me, and also my personal Facebook page. And I am open to friend requests from individuals who obviously are doing, the like work, and also are walking the path of grief. So I'm always open to that, open to friend requests and to connecting with individuals. So that's how you can find me.
All right. Dee?
I can be found on Facebook under D Anaya, Dee Anaya, on Instagram at Adventures of Grief Girl. It's a long one, but also Grief After Dark is one of my podcasts. We're on hiatus at the moment, so you could catch up with both seasons, are all fully available. And The Pleasure Temple, which is my new project, we are talking about relationships and how grief, is really a destructive force sometimes in those types of relationships. So we were talking about rebuilding, we were talking about pleasure, and we support mainly women, but everyone is welcome. So however you identify, you are welcome to follow any of those pages. And we have a new workshop coming up that I've teamed up with Bada Yoga. We will be doing a grief workshop on December 4th, and I will post links for that, as we get closer to the date.
Awesome. Jeffrey?
Yes, you can reach me on Facebook at Jeffrey Dean. You can reach me on Instagram at Jeffrey D. Davis. And I'll be doing a 5-day challenge in December. I'm setting the time for that for the second week of December, for tools and techniques of handling stress and overwhelm and confusion. Some of the self-care that'll help people navigate their relationships and family encounters and the holidays.
Mm-hmm. All right. With that being said, we are out of time. To the listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. The panel, thank you guys for being on. And hopefully you guys, the listeners, got so much out of this. I had a great time with us, enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to the next one. So with that being said, you guys be safe. Love you. Keep your heads up. And we will be doing this again. So see you soon.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.